During a fierce battle in the Korean War, Atticus Freeman, an American soldier, battles through the trenches. Suddenly, a red-skinned Korean woman floats out of a flying saucer, and robots and squid-like creatures take over the battlefield. She lands and hugs Atticus. A baseball bat slices through the creature as it is about to attack. With fireworks exploding behind him, Jackie Robinson steps forward, his Dodgers uniform covered in green goo. What in the flying mushrooms did I eat now? Atticus wakes up from his dream in the back of a segregated bus. In a tiny act of rebellion, Atticus defiantly flips off the Welcome to Kentucky sign as the bus drives out of the South. Suddenly, the bus breaks down and the passengers are left stranded. Rather than taking the alternate mode of transportation that the bus driver had arranged for them, Atticus and another black passenger choose to walk. Smart idea, because them people looking racist as hell. Certain looks from the white people make it obvious they wouldn't be welcome. On their walk, Atticus tells his companion that he's returning to Chicago after receiving an odd letter from his father, Montrose. In the south side of Chicago, George and his wife, Hippolyta, discuss their business, their travel guide for Black Americans. Their conversation quickly turns romantic, with George whispering sweet nothings to Hippolyta.
Hey, how you doing, love mama? Let me whisper in your ear.
While the two create questionable noises in the room, their daughter Diana is occupied with her most recent comic. She moves to the kitchen after hearing her mom squealing like a pig, and to her surprise, she sees her cousin Atticus. The family goes to hug him, but little does Atticus know that George and Hippolyta got nasty juices on them. Atticus and George meet in George's temporary tour guide office. Atticus explains the contents of his father's letter. Montrose has traveled to what Atticus calls Lovecraft country, believing it to be Arkham, Massachusetts, in search for answers. Montrose believes he has uncovered significant information about Atticus's late mother's ancestors and asserts that Atticus has a secret birthright. When George reads through Montrose's handwriting, he points out that Montrose wrote Artem, not Arkham, first. Atticus visits Montrose's favorite bar and speaks with the owner, who's busy getting his jewels polished by a man at the back. The owner reveals that Montrose had willingly left with a well-dressed white man in a fancy car 2 weeks ago. As day turns into night, a block party pulls in a crowd. Residents take to the street, and a woman named Letitia and her older sister Ruby join the festivities. After their performance, Letitia asks Ruby for a place to stay. Letitia catches sight of a shirtless Atticus and asks who he is. Sis, he currently dating Megan Good, your sister from Eve's Bayou. Ruby calls him Tick, surprising Letitia since he used to be a Steve Urkel. The sisters then argue about Letitia's broke ass. Letitia says she'll work at the fancy retail shop in the rich part of the neighborhood, but Ruby says she's been applying there for years with no luck. Back with Atticus and George, they go over an atlas filled with Diana's drawings. The drawings show symbols marking clan hotspots and safe places for Black travelers and more. Atticus and George decide to go to Artem together to search for Montrose. Atticus goes home, looking for clues in the novels his father loves. Instead, he finds his father's gun, which he knows will be useful later. He also calls a Korean woman named Jia, who tells him he never should have left Korea. In the morning, Atticus finds Letitia loading her things into George's car, hoping to catch a ride. The two catch up together and set off on their trip with George. When they stop at a gas station, a white boy starts acting like a monkey to mock Atticus and Letitia. Get that fugly Harry Potter-looking ass out our screen. In the morning, the trio makes a stop in Simmonsville, a predominantly white town. They decide to go to a diner George had suggested, but it's now owned by white people, not black people as George had assumed. A fat pig leaves immediately, probably to unbig his big wide back. Unfazed, George maintains that they still have the right to eat in peace, while the white people inside the diner scrutinize them. Letitia excuses herself to the bathroom when she hears the waiter on the phone talking about them. The waiter assures the caller that he didn't serve them after what happened to Ms. Lydia, the former owner. While George checks the menu, Atticus surveys the interior. The white walls cause him to ask George why the White House is white. As George starts to respond, the truth becomes clear to Atticus. The diner didn't just change owners peacefully. The previous black owners were likely forced out, or worse, and their business was burned down. Atticus uncovers signs of the cover-up by shifting a floor tile, revealing the charred remains beneath. Letitia suddenly bursts in from the back, signaling it's time to leave because they've been discovered. Future Trump supporters drive furiously towards the diner as the group drives away. A tense car chase out of Simmonsville begins, with Letitia behind the wheel. During the chase, Atticus spots a sleek silver car that positions itself between their car and the pursuing mob. The mysterious car crushes the pursuer's vehicle, and a young woman steps out, silently watching as the trio drives away. Looking like Miss Daenerys Targaryen, Atticus, George, and Letitia get to Letitia's brother Marvin's house. They receive information from Marvin, who has access to records about Artem in the neighboring town of Bideford. Marvin also cautions them about Eustace Hunt, the Bideford sheriff, who is well known for his overt bigotry. Tensions in the family flare up that night. Letitia and Marvin quarrel about her being a broke ass while George and Atticus deal with their personal problems. Atticus describes how his last meeting with Montrose resulted in a physical fight over his choice to enlist in the military. George comforts Atticus, saying that Montrose still cared much about him despite disagreeing with Atticus's decision. Atticus scoffs that Montrose never wrote him a letter unless he needed help. George explains that Montrose came for dinner every night and would wait to hear about Atticus, or else he wouldn't return home. As Atticus gets upset for always hearing George defend Montrose, glass breaks inside the house from the siblings' argument. They overhear Marvin yelling at Letitia that he doesn't want her in his house for another day because she missed their mom's funeral. The next morning, George, Letitia, and Atticus proceed toward Artem. On their trip, they quickly become disoriented in the thick forest that separates Artem from Bideford. To decide what to do next, they pull over. As Atticus and Letitia talk alone, Sheriff Hunt suddenly appears. After a heated exchange, Hunt reveals that the entire county is a sundown county, meaning it's filled with all white people, and black people aren't allowed there when the sun goes down. Atticus decides to leave heading north and asks Hunt if U-turns are allowed. Being the jerk that he is, Hunt makes him repeat a derogatory sentence to let them off. Although hesitant, Atticus gives in and obeys Hunt and says, "Please, will you let this N-word make a U-turn here?" Hunt allows them to leave, and Atticus speeds off. Hunt soon catches up to them and bumps into their car, but Atticus tries to stay within the speed limit or else they'll be pulled over. Atticus tells Letitia to prepare the gun as he starts getting anxious. They make it across the county line just in time, only to be apprehended by Hunt's deputies and taken further into the forest. Before Hunt or his men can resort to violence, a mysterious creature attacks, ripping off a deputy's arm and sending everyone into a frantic scatter. The creature must love pork. Atticus, George, and Letty find refuge in an abandoned cabin along with Hunt and one of his deputies. As Letty decides to make a run for the car, Hunt transforms into one of them when he's bitten. A whistle rings out, causing the monsters to retreat. By morning, George, Letitia, and Atticus emerge from the woods, bloodied but alive. They make their way to Artem and arrive at a grand mansion. They see the silver car from earlier. A young man greets them at the door and tells Atticus they've been expecting him, leaving the trio confused. All right, this young Alexander Skarsgård can get at me if he wants. While George and Letitia seem thrilled with their new accommodations at the Braithwaite Lodge, Atticus remains on high alert, brooding over the events in the forest. George is delighted by the endless supply of books while Letitia marvels over fancy clothes that mysteriously fit Letitia perfectly. An alarm rings, and the young man named William escorts them for lunch. When Atticus asks when his father will return from Boston, William explains that Montrose left 2 nights ago to see a lawyer with Miss Braithwaite. Atticus tries to find out which hotel Montrose is staying at so he can call him, but William informs him that the lodge doesn't have telephone lines. William then introduces the trio to Titus Braithwaite, Artem's founder and the original owner of the lodge. Despite William's explanation of the lodge's history, Atticus remains tense throughout his first day there. During lunch on a secluded terrace, unsettling discoveries arise. As Letitia rings the bell to ask for salt because white people don't season their food, Atticus asks her how she's so carefree after what happened last night. Letitia tries to explain but suddenly doesn't recall memories of the events. Atticus reminds them they were attacked by monsters, but both Letitia and George don't recall anything. When Atticus asks George about it, George tells him to sit down because they are being watched. They go to their car and are shocked to see it in perfect condition when it was shit due to the other day's events. When they visit the town, George and Letitia worry about Atticus, who might have PTSD. Atticus insists it's true, and the whistle from the night before rings out. Atticus rushes toward the sound but comes across a stone tower. The trio encounters Dell, the town's peacekeeper. Why she kinda look like Michael Jackson though? Atticus demands answers about the whistle, prompting George and Letitia to apologize for his outburst. They initially think the tower's a prison, but Dell reveals it's a silo. Dell then issues a warning about black bears and the need for guard dogs while making derogatory insinuations about black people. Doesn't Michael Jackson know she used to be black? After the encounter, Atticus grows suspicious that Montrose might be hidden in the tower. As they head back to the lodge at dusk, George recalls a story Montrose's late wife once shared. Her ancestor Hannah was a servant who escaped one night. George connects this with what William mentioned earlier about Titus being notoriously kind to his black slaves, suggesting something important. Piecing things together, Letitia realizes that Hannah was assaulted by Titus and managed to escape while pregnant during the fire that destroyed the original lodge. Suddenly, the same monsters from the previous night reappear and surround them. Christina Braithwaite arrives unexpectedly and uses a mysterious whistle to call off the creatures, which also erases the trio's memories. She orders Dell to escort the guests back to the lodge and make sure they settle in their rooms. Following the incident in the woods, Christina's father, Samuel Braithwaite, calls Atticus. When Atticus arrives at Samuel's laboratory, he is midway through a calm but unsettling organ removal ritual performed without the use of anesthesia. After Samuel is stitched up, he gives Atticus a lecture about a painting in which Adam names every creature created by God, highlighting the idea that everything has a purpose. Despite this, Atticus is still unsure of the reason for his visit. Samuel says he wants to go back to paradise, but Atticus cuts his BS out and asks for his father. Samuel tells him he doesn't want to see Montrose again until the ceremony at dawn. While Atticus meets with Samuel, George is in his room making his own discovery. He finds a hidden library behind a bookshelf filled with an extensive collection of books. Among them, George finds a copy of the bylaws and precepts of the Order of the Ancient Dawn. Christina escorts Atticus to his room and makes an effort to reassure him that he will not be harmed by the Order. Atticus says they're part of the KKK, but Christina says they don't associate with the poor. Knowing that getting allies depends on getting George and Letitia's memories restored, Atticus tries to confront her about removing the spell. Although Christina fulfills his request, she also uses sigils that are painted on the doorframe to lock Atticus in his room. Christina is called to the stable, in which she puts her hands into a cow's booty hole. Then the cow somehow births an ugly-ass creature. With each of them confined to separate rooms, George, Letitia, and Atticus experience vivid visions. Atticus is attacked by Gia. Letitia sees a vision of Atticus, which leads them to have a steamy session. George is visited by Montrose's late wife, revealing a deeper connection between them than just in-laws. Despite knowing it's a trick, George dances with her, appearing content to hold his beloved once more. Oh, so George was a cheater man whore. The lodge members watch outside as the trio become distorted versions of caged animals, using magic to manipulate their minds for their own amusement. Letitia tells Atticus to stop before he unzips his pants. Unfortunately for her, it's a real snake that comes out. Meanwhile, Atticus kills the apparition of Gia. The alarm rings, and William announces that it's soon time for dinner. He informs them of the dress code, but tells Letitia that it's a men-only event. The three of them discuss what happened a few moments ago and try to keep a grasp of reality. That evening, at a dinner with other lodge members, Samuel serves parts of the organ previously removed from him, which Atticus avoids eating and advises George to do the same. Samuel begins the ritual welcoming of the order, but George interrupts, revealing Atticus's connection to the Braithwaite family, by citing a bylaw that allows a descendant of Titus to command the lodge members. Atticus tells all them white mofos to leave, and they listen. George forces Samuel to acknowledge Atticus's lineage. After the tense dinner with the order, George and Atticus head to the Stone Tower's cellar to search for Montrose. Dell stops them, but Letitia smacks Michael Jackson. Montrose rises from the ground and sees the trio, causing him to get upset that they came. Okay, how the hell did you expect to escape then? Atticus explains that he received a letter from him, but Montrose says that the two of them haven't spoken in 5 years. A family argument stirs up, but Letitia interrupts them so they can leave. As they try to escape, the same sigils used to lock Atticus in his room are also marked on the exit of the covered bridge leading out of town. Their car crashes just as George reveals that the Order plans to use Atticus to reopen the portal to the Garden of Eden, seeking immortality. Samuel discovers them and shoots Letitia, and she bleeds out profusely. Samuel then shoots George to force Atticus into participating in the portal opening ceremony. At dawn, Samuel's plan unfolds. Christina shows Atticus that Letitia has been healed, and if he follows orders, George can be healed too. Meanwhile, while George is recovering from his wound, he reveals that Atticus might not even be Montrose's son, insinuating that George is probably Atticus's father. Atticus, feeling defeated, stands in the center of a group of machines designed to harness the sun's energy. He's positioned as a human lens to focus the light, which the machines use to try to open a portal to the Garden of Eden. Instead of seeing Eden, Atticus is surrounded by a protective aura and confronted by the ghost of Hannah. Atticus can only focus on Hannah's ghost, realizing he must escape just as she did to free himself from the grip of those who have been deceptively kind to him and his family. Letitia, George, and Montrose escape as the house starts falling apart. Due to Atticus's power, the ceremony is interrupted, and in an unexpected turn of events, it backfires. Atticus escapes as the lodge catches fire, the portal closes, and the order is annihilated. George passes away from his wounds, and Letitia, Atticus, and Montrose are left to mourn George's passing. Atticus cries uncontrollably. That's the end of the first 2 episodes. Should we cover more of this series?
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.